Hello, I'm Robert for Doomsday Debunked, where I help people who are scared of various things. And this is one that bothers Christians sometimes. Only particular Christians. I mean, it's not generally. It's not the Christianity that I was brought up with. But it's some Catholics and some people of other religions, and they worry about this idea. And so it's in the Catholic Catechism, and there's a statement that outside the Church there is no salvation. The Catholic Catechism is it's a sort of it kind of codifies the ideas of the Catholics, but it's not a kind that you absolutely have to hold to it. It's more like a kind of guidance, a kind of guardrail, like rails you can hold on to or something to help you in your understanding. And in fact, what the Pope Francis is what he said is quite a good take on the whole thing, and this actually relates to the Catechism as well. So he was assuring a grieving child that his atheist father would go to heaven, and he said, God is the one who says who goes to heaven, not the Catechism, not the Pope, not you or me, but God. So the Catechism doesn't tell you what God's mind is. Only God makes those decisions. So you have to approach all of this with, if the Pope can have that humility of saying that God is the one who says, not me, and not Catechism, not the Pope, not you or me, but God. If the Pope can have that humility, then all Catholics should have that humility to say that they don't actually know. And Catechism is just a work of human beings to try to codify the ideas of the Catholic Church. I think, sorry, I may have lost a little bit of me in that video, so anyway. No. Oh well, yes, for some reason I'm not getting the full page here, I don't know why that is. Anyway, never mind. You can see enough. So that's the background to all of this. When you get all these people pontificating, then remember that Pontiff himself is not pontificating about this, even though numerous people are pontificating. That word pontificating, I think, comes from the Pontiff, which is the Pope. So loads of people pontificating, but the Pope himself is not pontificating on this matter. And here also is Pope Benedict, and he also gave a long talk about this, and he spent a lot of time about how to reconcile this with either other Catholic ideas, but his basic ideas are similar to that. He says that with Jesus everything is possible. And so now I'm going to have a look at some of these people. So this is the actual Catechism itself, so do bear in mind that this is not God speaking. This is work of human beings trying to codify the and of course they say there's some blessing in it, of course, but this is not telling you what you've got to think. It's not telling you what God thinks. So but it does say that those who through no fault of their own do not know the gospel of Christ or his church would never seek God with a sincere heart. But then that wouldn't work with atheists. But that would work with other Christians. If you come and look at this one, it's another rather similar way. It said with him, you're with him or you're against him, but unless you don't know, you've got the excuse of not knowing about Jesus' teaching on the path. But then this is a somewhat different one. Oh no, that's the same one. That's the same idea, but this is a somewhat more different one. So this is a professor. He's again a Catholic, and he was asked, "Can my Buddhist husband be saved?" He was asked by a Catholic. "What about my Jewish neighbours, my sister-in-law, who is an atheist?" I'm Buddhist myself, I'm not Christian. I was brought up as a Christian, and my parents were both missionaries. And so I've made that transition from Christianity to Buddhism. I don't feel that I've rejected anything, I'm just following a different path. And so anyway, the branch of Christianity that I was in, I was sort of associated roughly with the Quakers, but I didn't actually have to become a member. Then they didn't have these sorts of ideas in them at all. And this chap, he's a Catholic, and he doesn't have these ideas. He's a Catholic professor in the United States, and he traces this doctrine back with Saint Cyprian of Carthage in 258. And he said that the superstitious Romans were requiring the Christians to give honour to the Roman gods. And then so some Christians did, and they turned their back on Christianity. At least that's what the other Christians thought, but they were just doing it in order to evade death and by martyrdom. And so he says that there was a big debate about those who succumbed and those who hadn't, and there was a disagreement how to deal with it. And then that led with this warning that if you've turned your back on the Church of Christ by following this advice, then you can't know the rewards of Christ. That's what he said. But there's different ideas about that now, and say the current Pope is not responding like that. And he says, sadly, this doctrine was later used to suggest that none can be saved unless they're baptized in union with the Holy See. But God is not a miser, and our limitations are not limitations upon God's grace. If Christ is truly the goodness and truth of God, then all who seek truth and respond with goodness must somehow be experiencing Christ. And that would be the way that Quakers would think about it, quite a bit like that. They talk about that of God in everyone. And so for them, and if Christ is truly the goodness and truth of God, then all who seek truth and respond with goodness must somehow be experiencing Christ. So that's a way for a Christian to think about other religions and humanists and everything from as they see things. And so I'm not saying that I'm a Buddhist, I obviously don't see it like that at all. But for a Christian to can then look at someone who's a Buddhist and say, well, they are seeking the truth and responding with goodness, so they must somehow be experiencing Christ. And that's a way of understanding this, if you're a Christian. And so as a Buddhist, I would look at Christians and I say, oh no, they're the Christians, and that's the awakening of the Buddha within them. That is bringing them to their goodness and kindness, and that's what they're calling Christ. I mean, I might look at them like that, but actually, we have this thing in Buddhism called rime, and the idea of rime is that you don't do that sort of stuff like I just did. You don't try to interpret other religions as yours. You don't try and take on their things into yourself as well. But you respect the entire integrity of each religion as it is. And some of these Buddhist teachers, then they take up several different branches of Buddhism, and they respect the entire integrity of each one and don't try to interpret each one. So don't go around doing equivalent saying, oh, this Christian must be, that's actually really Buddha's enlightenment working there. I mean, they don't do that sort of thing. It's not that particular. Of course, they all agree on Buddhist enlightenment, but they have different ideas about different intricate aspects of Buddhism. And so they just let them be as they are, and you respect that. And then you respect the Christian view as that's Christian. And then some remarkable people can take on both. So we are very conceptual. We have to put things into little boxes. And so, we can like that, then we can a little box like that. And we just can't seem to deal with things except by having these words and concepts and little boxes and squares and circles and triangles, and we just can't seem to get away. Even if you try, you can't get out of those boxes. Trying to get out of the boxes is just another box. So, some people, this is the sort of thing we get in Buddhism of talk. This may be a little bit of Buddhist teaching I'm giving there, but you get people who try and make a little box of getting out of boxes. And that doesn't work at all. You just put yourself in a different box if you do that. Yes, there's no point in that. So, but it's very difficult to we can't help but sort of box everything up, and then but some people, if you respond in a very intuitive way, if you respond to the wisdom of the situation you're in, and if you respond to the goodness of your heart, the goodness, the Christian would think of the goodness of God, opening out to something that's much vaster than yourself, and to the wisdom that's intrinsic. You find a certain wisdom intrinsic to the situation you're in. And if you do that in every situation that you're in, then you don't really need these conceptual things, like the way you try to explain it to people who are not able to do that. And so people who are able to do that, then they can actually have these systems at once, because they're explaining Christianity to Christian, explain Buddhism to Buddhist, and it's just because that's what people need, because they're talking to people who have to have everything in little boxes, and so they've either got to be a Buddhist or they've got to be a Christian, because they're just so conceptual. We can't help it. It's just the way we are. So if you look at it like that, then I think one good way of looking at this is to think of different people as being receptacles for the religious ideas or the humanist ideas or whatever ideas they have. And because we are so boxy people, we have to put everything in boxes, then we can only adopt one of these things at a time, most of us. Or some of us can maybe adopt 2 or 3 of them if you're very, very lucky. If you're very, you can sort of try and you can sort of switch between one and the other. You can switch. You can sort of maybe do a little switch and say, oh, I'll be a Christian for 5 seconds. You could try to do that. And maybe you would have some success if you had previous experience of being a Christian and a previous experience of being a Buddhist. And you could say, oh, I'll be a Christian for 5 seconds. And you're just sort of flashing on what it felt like when you were Christian and sort of flashing on what it felt like when you were Buddhist. So, but that's not it either. That's still just popping from one box to another. That's still being a very boxy person. But anyway, so this is the so these are the kind of mental gymnastics, even what this chap is saying. And this doesn't mean there's little reason to be a Christian. Christ has much to offer the world, and you can't do so without cooperation. And so our doctrine here clearly explains that these persons can be saved. There's much to be gained by learning the teaching of other great religions. So this is boxy. He's looking at other religions and saying, people in these other boxes, they can be saved. And saved is his own concept in Christianity. And then that is a way of reconciling other religions with Christianity. But the Rebbe approach would be just to say that, just to follow the Christian path, and the Christian path is about having love for others, and you don't go around. If you have loving kindness for someone, then it's not necessarily going to be the best thing for them to convert them to Christianity. So this would be a kind of the missionary spirit, but conditional. My parents were both missionaries, but towards the end of his time as a missionary, my father got quite a bit of appreciation of the native religion in Madagascar, where he was missionary, and then he became very interested in other religions, and he taught religious instruction at school. Now, he always was Christian, but you can have that kind of appreciation of another religion without having to kind of say you're always going to interpret it as Christianity. And then you can learn from these other religions. And there'll be things that they do, ideas they have, little concepts. Now those you can bring across sometimes. Examples, nice images, nice little stories that come from another religion that very nicely illustrate some Christian idea. Or Christian stories that very nicely illustrate a Buddhist idea. If you're a Buddhist teacher, there's no reason why you don't do that. That's not muddling things up. But if you try and sort of interpret Buddhism in Christian ideas, or Christians as Buddhism or Hinduism or so on, then you're making a bit of a mush of things, and you're not clearly understanding these other religions. And so the Rime approach is saying we need to keep, these are great traditions, and the traditions are really valuable. And if you're a Muslim, then Islam is very valuable for you. And it's your path. It's a thing of great beauty, a thing of great wonder, a thing of great joy. And if you're a Christian, it's the same for that. And if you're Buddhist, it's the same for that. And because it's so difficult to bring them all together into one kind of a mush, if we don't want to mush them, that would just spoil all the beauty and all the truth in them. So, given that you can't, that mushing is no good, flipping back and forth, one second I'll be Buddhist, 1 second I'll be Christian, 1 second I'll be Muslim, 1 second I'll be Taoist, another second I'll be Shintoist, and just flash, then that's not it either. That's just very confusing. And so you could do that if you were a teacher. Maybe you'll be an hour as one and an hour as another in order to teach someone. But that's not really it either. So I think the best way is just to follow your path, whatever it is. So for me, I'm following the path of a Buddhist, and then other people are receptacles for other paths, and then you can respect them as being like it was if I was a Christian, then I would be this other person, and if I was a Muslim, I would be this other person, and if I was a Jew, I would be this other person, and if I was a Taoist, or if I was a Confucian, then I would be this Confucian person, and if I was a humanist, then I would be this humanist person. And so they're all different receptacles for different religious ideas, different beliefs, different boxes that I could adopt. I could have adopted, but I'm not. But I am very clearly Buddhist, because that's the path I'm following. So I think this is the best way to deal with all this. And so the Pope is talking to Catholics, and so if I go back to my annotation there, this just this Wikipedia story. Wikipedia is just written by people, and they're not necessarily experts. I'm just going to point out that there's a talk down here, and then where was it? I think it was that one. Yeah, there's a whole conversation about it, and then they're saying yes, we should. Yes, I absolutely agree. Presently, that article is misleading and should be corrected. I could copy and paste this conversation to that article's talk page now. That was done in 2008. They copied this over in 2008, and this is this article that has scared some people. You go to the article, and it just hasn't been changed since 2008. They haven't fixed that thing that they're supposed to do. It gives a very misleading impression that this is the current Catholic idea, that there is all salvation, and they don't even give certainly in the introduction, they don't even give this bit, as far as I could see. Probably do later on. So do bear in mind that the Wikipedia is often it's tend to be quite good on Christianity, but this article it's very much what they've left out. It could have been written in 1950 perhaps, and then there's that bit. So go back to where we started. There's Francis, and he just says God is the one who says who goes to heaven, not the Catechism, not the Pope, not you or me, but God. So that humility. So this, when you hear all these people pontificating about it, remember the pontiff himself does not pontificate. He did not pontificate. He said that he had the humility before God not to pontificate about this. The pontiff did not pontificate. And then if you go to Pope Benedict, then he wrote one of these long, I'm going to use my word, boxy. He's sort of, well, he goes through and he says, he's saying basically the same as Pope Francis, but he's then going on and saying, he gives long, he's got the entire transcript down there, you can read it. It is giving it's sort of like in-universe explanation, as it were. The inside the Catholic universe explanation as the pontiff to Catholics. And that's what they're doing. He's doing there. And he's basically saying the same thing. That really God and Jesus can do anything. And the Catechism doesn't constrain what God can do. And so that is what we need to do from the Christian point of view. But then I think you can actually go a little bit beyond that and say, okay, this is the Christian trying to make things work within our boxes, but you can also just respect other religions just as they are and not worry about whether they're saved in your little boxy way of looking at things. This is your way of looking at it, our way of looking at it, but Buddhists has another way of looking at it. And then respect that, that's just them. Muslims have another way. And I think that's the best way to look at all this. And then you don't bother your head about whether someone in another religion is going to be saved according to Christian ideas. I mean, that is important to Christians. It's not important to a Muslim. What's important to a Muslim is it's how you be saved if you follow the Muslim path. And what's important to a Buddhist is the path to awakening and enlightenment. And you don't need to do this trying to fit people of other religions into other religions. Sort of fitting a round peg into a square hole and they just don't fit. And you go bang, 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 and you say, what does this mean? What is God going to do with this round hole in this square peg, in this square hole? It's not going to fit. And so there's something wrong there, and then you can puzzle your life away at that, and then you can get very upset and scared. And please don't do that. Religions are here to help people and bring joy and happiness in the world, kindness and love and peace. And that's that's the heart of religion. So anyway, I hope this helps some of the people who've got a little bit scared by all this. Let's bring this up. Well, there we go. Wonderful.